Star Trek, the Star Trek, was a feature film released in May of 2009, directed by J.J. Abrams. Now you might have expected me to say it was the worst thing since my son, or something like that. No, that's not really the case, but it was the worst thing since my great-granddaughter, Crystal. See, she's a stripper at Polecats in Atlantic City, New Jersey. See, Star Trek's a quality-made film, but it's what I call a guilty pleasure, which is why I compare it to my lovely, lovely granddaughter. It's flashy, action-packed, well-made, well-lit, and it keeps your interest the whole time. Your brain doesn't get a whole lot out of it in terms of actual science fiction, but the effects are really good, the cast is good, and it's a lot of fun. Sometimes I like to have fun. I also didn't find it quite as offensive as other big summer blockbuster movies. Fuck you! So you ask yourselves, how can Mr. Plinkett, the guy that ripped the TNG films a new asshole, actually kinda like this movie? Well, the devil's in the details, my lovelies, and we're taking a trip to hell. Who's with me? Number 1, the backstory. So I'll start off by saying that my favorite Star Trek film is actually Star Trek the Motion Picture. Yeah, the boring one. If you think of it in context as a big movie version of the 1960s TV show, then it's a perfect Star Trek film. It's a movie about a giant energy cloud that's coming towards Earth.
It's on a precise heading for Earth.
Very slowly, Admiral Kirk comes back and uses this opportunity to get back on board the Enterprise, because that's where he really wants to be. But on a more thematic level, the movie's really about change and transformation, discovery, and people finding their place. V'ger was really just looking to find an answer to the biggest question of all. Why am I here? V'ger was also a sex metaphor for a vagina and Decker's desire to bang a robot replica of a dead chick he never got to de-virginize. There was homoerotic tension, vaginal symbolism,
the opening of the V'ger orifice,
penis envy,
Kirk units,
and a galactic orgasm.
I have successfully penetrated the next chamber of the alien's interior.
In fact, you could say that the whole subtext of Star Trek the Motion Picture was almost entirely about fucking.
Now, what do you suggest we do? Spank it.
The new Star Trek film had a lot of sexual elements too, but it wasn't quite as complex or subtle. But most importantly, I like Star Trek the Motion Picture because I can leave the house in the middle of a scene, get the brakes fixed on my car, get a haircut, go to the bank, and then come home and not miss anything. You see, I like my sci-fi slow and dull, and I like my action fast and awesome. Which is why the new Star Trek movie, to me, is an action movie. And for an action movie, it's a pretty darn good one. If Star Trek movies were on a gradient chart, and in the middle was bad or mediocre, green indicating quality, red indicating bad, from the center to the left was more boring, and from the center to the right was less boring. Star Trek the Motion Picture would be on the left, and Star Trek would be on the right. The rest of the films would fall into these areas on the gradient chart. So now that no one is confused, let's move on. You see, Star Trek the show will always be there. Same with the motion picture. But if you think they'd ever release a film like that again to mainstream audiences, then you need to understand how the world works. And I ain't talking about plate tectonics. Now we all can whine and complain about how they reset the timeline and turned Star Trek into action schlock. But really, what else was gonna happen? It was apparent that the TNG crew was pretty much done. They all looked tired and bored, and the writers seemed to have forgotten that Star Trek could have some levity to it. They insisted on making one crappy action movie after another with a cast that was not suited for action movies at all. The movies lacked imagination, adventure, excitement. And basically in just 4 films, the TNG franchise was rushed into a coffin, along with the rest of Star Trek. Poor Gene. So much for your peaceful vision of the future, idiot. People don't want that crap no more. People want shooting. So now what? Well, were they gonna make a Deep Space Nine movie, or Voyager, or Enterprise after the show got fucking cancelled? Seriously. And while there are a lot of Star Trek fans that would go see these movies, primarily nerds, they don't come anywhere close to the number needed to turn a profit. General audiences just wouldn't give a crap. You have to admit though that Trek was really getting stale. and the new movie did feel a bit refreshing. Plus, it was kinda neat to see the old Enterprise again, and Kirk and Spock, even if they were new dudes playing them. So after 7 years of nothing, Paramount decided to resuscitate Star Trek. And you knew it wasn't gonna be for us geeks. It was gonna be for the popcorn-eating, dim-witted masses so they could make a bunch of cash. With Star Trek, it was exactly what it needed to be, and in that sense, it was perfect. Let me explain in my next section. Number 2. Yeah, I'd be down with that for sure. So just how big are you? I like women with a lot of meat on their bones. If you know what I'm saying, LOL. I'm sorry, I accidentally typed my instant message into the video. Number 2. Desperation, reboots, and the quick buck. Now, you may have seen my other review of Star Trek. You know, the review where a woman gets raped by Star Trek in an alley?
Oh, God.
A lot of people seem to misinterpret this metaphorical review to mean that the producers raped Star Trek.
That wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
What I mean is that the producers took Star Trek and turned it into something that would have its way with the audience, whether we liked it or not. And in the end, some of us liked what they did, even if we didn't really want it or need it. You gotta understand that Hollywood is not a democracy. Star Trek fans can't vote on what'll be the next incarnation of Star Trek. It happened. It was coming and we couldn't stop it. We had to take it, even if it was up our ass. So why didn't they just let Star Trek end? Or just make a new, original science fiction film? Well, that question has 3 answers. Number 1, marketability. Number 2, brand recognition. Number 3, fucking money. See, movies don't have a lot of time to make their money back. Why's that, you ask? Competition. In 1979, when Star Trek the Motion Picture was released, there were like 3 channels of TV, somebody had a radio, and a couple of movies were released each week. Today there's video on demand, mobile video, Netflix Watch Now, satellite radio, digital cable, HD cable, Blu-ray players, Redbox, internet porno, Amazon.com Watch Now, Amazon.com Watch Instantly, Amazon.com Watch Spontaneously, iTunes, podcasts, iPhones, online web series, IMAX theater, internet porno, video games, Wii, Xbox, PlayStation, video games you play live, Facebook for mobile phone, HD flip video camera videos, HD flip video camera video web series, HD flip video camera video interactive web series uploaded to Facebook via iPhone 4 mobile uploader app, 3D movies, YouTube, bloggers, vlogs, Hulu, streaming video, and the zoo. Now, because there are so many sources of entertainment, this has had what I call a blurring effect on modern pop culture. The further backwards in time you go, the sharper the memory most titles will be to the masses, and that's because there was less crap to sort through. If a movie has a title that people recognize, it'll add a lot of financial security to that project. Now, while a remake is not necessarily a new thing, most people have noticed an increasing number of them in, say, the last 5 years. In fact, over 96% of films released by Hollywood in the last 2 years have been remakes. I shit you not, I did not make up that statistic. In the 90s, there was a couple remakes of TV shows for novelty's sake. It was just fun and tongue-in-cheek. But now it's getting fucking obnoxious to where it's mostly everything that's coming out now. And this ain't just limited to remakes of movies. It's basically anything that the general public might recognize. From old movies to TV shows to video games, comic books, and so on. In fact, I'm not putting it past Hollywood to make Snuggies the movie. You think I'm shitting you? Let's take a look at some recent remakes and movies that were made just because of their recognizable brand name. Let's take a look at these films. Hit the music, Johnny! I said hit it, Johnny! Oh, wait. Johnny died of colorectal cancer. Clash of the Titans, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Get Smart, Alice in Wonderland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Planet of the Apes, A-Team, Starsky and Hutch, The Dukes of Hazzard, Poseidon, Scooby-Doo, Bewitched, Fat Albert, The Shaggy Dog, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Cobra Surfer, G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra Surfer, Amityville Horror, Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Dawn of the Dead, Death Race, Speed Racer, Rollerball, Karate Kid remake with the girl in it, the remake of the Karate Kid, Piranha, My Bloody Valentine, The Wicker Man, Robin Hood, The Wolfman, Robin Hood again, Sherlock Holmes, The Stepfather, The Hills Have Eyes, When a Stranger Calls, Land of the Lost, House of Wax, Ocean's 11, War of the Worlds, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Curious George, Psycho, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Pink Panther, The Stepford Wives, I Am Legend, The Longest Yard, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Hulk remake of the reboot, Fame, The Hitcher, Miami Vice, Charlotte's Web, The Heartbreak Kid, King Kong, Hairspray, The Omen. Don't forget about fraudulent sequels made 20 years later for no reason. Clerks 2, Basic Instinct 2, Tron 2, Wall Street 2, Indiana Jones 4, Live Free, Die Hard, X-Files, Rocky Balboa, Rambo, Universal Soldier, whatever, and Bambi 2? What the fuck? Now this of course leads me right back to Star Trek. For Paramount, a property like Star Trek and the massive impact it's had on pop culture was like one of the last big money pots to plunder. No matter who you are or where you live, you can identify the image of Kirk and Spock and the Starship Enterprise. Classic Star Trek images are as identifiable and well known as like the McDonald's logo, Santa Claus, Superman, and dog crap. Now this is the most important thing to remember when watching this movie. Star Trek is essentially a remake of the 1960s TV series. It's a film that specifically exploits the iconic images and phrases from the old TV show for mass audience appeal. It's really no different than the 1998 remake of Lost in Space. In both cases, you have a corny, low-budget TV series from the 60s now done up in a fast-paced modern film, strictly for nostalgia exploitation.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Set phasers to stun.
When you accept this fact, you can learn to enjoy the film more for what it is.
Energize.
A fun, action-packed nod to the old TV show. Nothing more. However, the writers and producers understood that not all of the established Star Trek fans would understand this, so they tailor-made the film almost perfectly to what it needed to be, in a marketing sense. Let's break it down. Oh, I got my parachute pants on. I got my cat pregnant. Number 3, Harry's deconstructing. Here I will discuss the thought process that the creators of Star Trek must have gone through and how they made almost every decision correctly from a making money perspective. So you're going to remake Star Trek, which is something that requires just as much nerd rage delicacy as, say, making the Lord of the Rings films. You can't please all the nerds out there, so you gotta get it as close as you possibly can. So what's the first thing you do? Don't make it a prequel. We all know how prequels turn out, don't we? What the fuck? Plus they already kinda did a prequel. In a universe as complex and intricate as Star Trek, making a prequel and the films that would follow it would most certainly never ever be 100% accurate. This would lead to endless complaining by Star Trek fans. 2. Nimoy yes, Shatner no. You do need to attempt to bridge the new with the old, but you must do it very simply and subtly, and not completely fuck it up like Generations. A lot of people were upset that it was only Nimoy in the film, and there was no William Shatner, including Shatner himself. Now I like Bill. He's a nice man. He's got a great merkin, but keeping him out was a very smart decision. Nimoy's presence was necessary to link this film to the original Star Trek, and to assure the fans that this was indeed really Star Trek, and not just some hackneyed imitation or remake. Nimoy's also the guy with the wee bit more credibility. He's a great director, he understands Star Trek, and he refused to have anything to do with Generations. And if that don't give him credibility, I don't know what will. Remember, they are remaking Star Trek, not making another Star Trek. If you had Nimoy and Shatner in the film, it would cast a huge shadow over Chris and Zachary as the new Kirk and Spock. Those guys needed to shine in the film and not get upstaged by Shatner's presence. Do I need to remind you of Generations again? I'd rather not think about that anymore. Kinda like the time at the Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City. I had a couple too many to drink. I was playing the Slingo Mystery Bonus slot machine. I had let my first cat watch my seat while I went and took a crap. When I was in the bathroom, my cat won $1 million on the slot machine, and then skipped town. Eventually, I tracked her down in Boca Raton, Florida, and then I murdered her. Number 3, don't fuck up the cast. The accuracy of the cast of Star Trek is really important. Why? Well, the biggest reason here is that they needed to trick Star Trek fans into believing that these people are indeed supposed to be the younger versions of the characters that we know and love, and that this isn't just another Hollywood remake for quick, easy money. Making any kind of radical or creative changes to the characters would have been unacceptable. That and the reason why not to fuck with the characters is that they're banking almost entirely on nostalgia.
Bones!
Fascinating.
Damn it, man, I'm a doctor, not a physicist.
I'm giving her all she's got, Captain!
But let's analyze which demographic each character was made to appeal to. Chris Pine appeals to female audience members and the Sulu. Simon Pegg provides the comic relief, as well as brings in some sci-fi geek credibility. Harold and Kumar guy appeals to stoners. And Zoe Saldana is there for one obvious reason. She's entirely believable as a xenolinguistics expert.
Sir, I pick up no Romulan transmission, or transmission of any kind in the area.
So now that you got a really great cast, it's time to hypercharge the characters. Star Trek took the mildest character traits and electrified them. You can argue that the characters seem more intense because they're younger and they haven't really matured yet. Or you can say it's because movie audiences are too impatient and dumb to grasp subtle character development. Well, both are true. Anyway, let's look at Kirk. Kirk is a confident leader, a bold risk taker, and he loves the ladies. Older Kirk had these traits still, but displayed them with maturity and distinction. Younger Kirk liked to yell more, run more, punch more, and was distracted by women like a horny college guy. Seems about right. Kirk was also very clearly the film's main character. He starts off as a directionless punk who gets into bar fights, and by the end of the film makes it all the way up to the captain's chair. Sure, it was a little unrealistic, but hey, at least he had an arc. And at least we understood what the fuck was going on. Next is Spock. What do you do with Spock? Well, Spock appears to be a cold and logical guy, but he's got boiling emotions underneath. Scenes with Spock and Kirk would almost write themselves. People shouting is drama. Spock is also half human. Spock can now be torn between two worlds.
You will always be a child of two worlds.
He's rife with inner conflict and turmoil. You can even make him a victim of racism.
To what disadvantage are you referring?
Your human mother.
Then throw in some kind of creepy Oedipus complex and you're all set. McCoy is no longer necessary, actually, because he's not needed in this new equation, at least right now. But he was shoehorned into this movie because he had to be there. They crammed in the thing where he got Kirk on the ship to give him some doctor stuff to do, but it's hard to fit in each character perfectly. Let's move on to Uhura. Uhura's importance has increased, and it has nothing to do with her character. She's actually replaced Bones as the third most important character because of sex appeal. And she's even on the poster. And yes, Ilia was on the poster for Star Trek the Motion Picture way back in 1979. But Ilia was also a little more important to the plot of that film. Actually, she was very important. Isn't at all. They wouldn't dare just have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy on the poster. It'd be way too gay. They'd have to call it 3 guys, 1 saucer. So let's talk about Uhura. She wasn't really anything that special to begin with. I mean, she knew what she was doing, but she always struck me as just someone who was there doing her job in the background. In fact, she was only kinda competent. She was always having problems.
Sorry, sir.
I'm not interested in your excuses, Lieutenant. Re-establish contact with that transmitter.
It doesn't make sense.
Uhura, your last subspace log contained an error in the frequencies column.
She couldn't even speak a word of Klingon well into her 70s. Now all of a sudden she's super ambitious, tall, crazy, sexy, and some kind of super genius.
And Lieutenant Uhura is unmatched in xenolinguistics. We would be wise to accept her conclusion.
In fact, every minor character is now a super genius, except for Sulu, who's still learning how to drive the ship. This film is racist against Chinamen. Now the only memorable character trait with Sulu was that he once got drunk and ran around with the sword. So now of course he's like a master swordsman or something. Then you got Scotty. Scotty was a Scotsman who liked to drink, and he said weird and eccentric things from time to time.
We should have left those false-faced goons in the transporter.
But now not only is he a super genius, he's also batshit crazy. You see, all the minor characters in Star Trek were really just stereotypes, because Roddenberry wanted to portray a future where everyone from Earth worked together.
Roddenberry created an unprecedented mix of culture and race working alongside each other in the future.
There was a black.
You couldn't get even blacks on television, and I not only had a black,
an Asian,
great affection I have for Asians,
a Scottish, and a Russian.
We appeared in people's bedrooms and their living rooms and their kitchens.
So they basically just hypercharged the mildest of character elements. Then the next thing to do was to hypercharge everything else! An away mission used to look like this.
Captain's log, stardate 51:20.
Now it looks like this. A space battle used to look like this.
Fire. Laser 1, fire.
Now it looks like this.
6 maneuver fire.
Laser 2, fire.
Laser 2, fire.
Fuck, walking used to look like this. Now it looks like this.
I can do that.
The film took all the elements that made up Star Trek and put them into overdrive. Even the warp drive is faster. Ships are bigger. Phaser fights are more intense. Snow dogs are bigger. Emotions are hypercharged too. So many emotions. You got a woman in labor, a captain dying, baby being born minutes before the father dies, drunken bar fights, bullying and teasing, calling mothers whores, more fighting, almost falling off a cliff, more punching, a newfound determination brought on by a paternal guilt complex, defiance, shouting, hostility, more shouting, Winona Ryder, sadness and loss, emotional distancing, guilt, awkwardness, confrontation, emotional breakdowns, rage, violence, hate, torture, choking, more choking, even more choking, mass genocide, mother dying before your eyes, revenge, insanity, and then lastly, confidence, pride, and stability. I think I need to go see a therapist after this. No, not her! Number 4, the timeline. Now I couldn't do this review without discussing the most controversial element of the film. The complete eradication of the Star Trek timeline as we knew it. So does that mean that all of Star Trek doesn't exist now? Well, I have an answer. The answer is, no one has an answer. Also, who cares? If you ask me, Star Trek was totally ruined in what I consider to be the worst episode of Star Trek ever. Parallels. In this episode, Worf passes through some kind of space thing that makes him aware each time that the universe fractures into other parallel universes. We discover that the universe fractures into other universes like every 5 minutes or whatever. In the end, we see thousands of enterprises from other timelines all converging together. The fact that an incalculable amount of yous are existing in other timelines, and that you're not unique, and actually kind of disposable, gosh, that's like the most shocking and devastating thing that you could ever discover. This episode is so sloppy and lazy that it makes me want to vomit up shit. So after seeing this schlock, I'm not sure what the big deal is with Star Trek. Just imagine it like this. We can all pretend that the original timeline continued on in its own parallel universe, and that we're just watching another universe. Whatever.
Another universe. Perhaps in another dimension. Occupying the same space at the same time.
Or do you feel like you were meant for something better? Something special?
Oh, I guess that kind of devalues the whole destiny thing. Oh well. Oh wait. If we went with that idea, then we'd also have to agree that those universes started fracturing apart as well. Wow, that really makes the whole destiny thing not so special. Okay, scratch that. Let's look at it from another perspective. And this is even more devastating. I'm sure as science fiction fans, most of you are probably familiar with the Drake equation. It's a mathematical formula that takes into account all the possible variables and comes up with a number of potential planets with intelligent life on it. I have a similar equation, which I'll call the Plinkett equation. This equation will measure how often history is being changed in Star Trek alone. First, we'll take the number of times a potentially history-altering time travel event has taken place in each of the Star Trek series. Now, considering how often time travel events have occurred in just a sliver of the Federation that we've been witness to, we must now include the probability that similar events have occurred on other Starfleet ships with other crews. Next, we'll account for other spacefaring civilizations in the Alpha Quadrant, who may have also had their share of time-traveling events. Next, we'll include the whole Milky Way galaxy and multiply our estimates. Remember when the dad from that 70s show was changing history constantly for hundreds of years? Yeah, plug that shit in. Next, we'll multiply the findings by the number of known galaxies in the universe, and then we'll have our result. Ready? History is changing every 23 millionths of a second. In the time it took me to say that, history has changed 186 million times. In fact, you no longer exist. Now when the Guatnu in the Delta Quadrant travels back in time to save his house from going into foreclosure, does it affect the events in the Alpha Quadrant? I don't know, maybe. Janeway jumped into the Delta Quadrant and then tried to change time from there, so maybe. It's all theoretical anyway. So is time travel, for that matter. You think J.J. Abrams knows? Or that guy? Or that guy with the money? None of them know. Wait, something's wrong. Something's changed. The timeline just changed. Oh no, my first cat is now alive again somehow. She's taken that money she won in Atlantic City and started some kind of media empire. And now she's trying to murder me! Anyway, so if you stand back and look at Star Trek and consider all the weird and fucked up shit that's happened, none of this matters. The people that made this film will attempt to explain the whole timeline thing and try to make us feel better that they didn't erase anything. But the truth of the matter is that they don't have an answer, and they don't really care at all. So if you get worked up about this, it won't make any difference, because as I said before, there's not an answer. They just wanted to make a film that would make a bunch of money. Period. It's like getting all worked up about the Star Wars prequel. Oh, wait. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Delicious things to eat. The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.